Thursday, June 9th, special meeting, and who's taking charge?
You are.
You're the mayor. You remember that? Last
I am,
December?
but I'm telling you, I seriously, I can't see this.
Why don't you
Bro,
bring your
Just
glasses?
ask
I
if there's
don't
any
know.
public discussion.
Any public discussion, I see none.
Well, wait a minute, you don't have your glasses on. There's a couple people out there. See if they,
This is just like blur.
Have her give a roll call.
Roll call, please.
can you read it from here?
Councilmember Barton?
Present.
DeGraff?
I am here.
Zuber?
Here.
Vice Mayor Restusha?
Present?
Mayor Euchre?
Here. With that,
Now we're gonna discuss the
discuss
resolution.
the
and give it to
resolution.
Kevin.
Okay, does anybody have any questions? You should just take over the meeting and then
Well, I
so-
did,
He is.
I'm giving you credit. I
Well-
wanna get this moving here.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll take
Just move
this.
your lips.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, we're here to adopt a resolution, water conservation resolution that would repeal the existing water conservation resolution that we have in place. There's a number of things that I wanted to go over with you today. Just a brief background of kind of how we got here, differences from what the city is currently implementing versus what this resolution is the proposed resolution will implement. I'll identify some of the direct impacts to the city, our businesses, churches, other entities, residents, obviously. Review some options for the council, looking at possible assistance from the city to the private entities, and then looking for feedback from the council. So just a brief background, the governor issued an executive order on March 28th of this year, which basically tasked the State Water Resources Control Board with considering to adopt certain water conservation measures. He gave them till May 25th, and the board met and approved and adopted a resolution on May 24th. And basically what you see here in front of you is the result of the measures that were adopted. One of the key components, the resolution that the state came up with was that each water supplier must implement the actions stated in their water shortage contingency plan. And that's a part of our urban water management plan that was adopted back in 2018. And you have certain stages or levels or percentages of a water shortage in your water shortage contingency plan. The state identified that you have to follow the action items in your water shortage contingency plan for a shortage of 10 to 20%. And then, like I said, yeah, ours was adopted back in 2018. So how that differs from the current water conservation measures, the outdoor watering, so I'll just get into the differences here. So basically everything you see in the resolution is the same. The outdoor watering schedule is down to 2 days a week from 3 days. That's the major change. I mean, that's for residential. That's basically for all outdoor watering throughout the city. So our proposed right now would be a Saturday and a Tuesday and a Sunday and a Wednesday. The other major difference is water use for our decorative water features or fountains will be prohibited except for ponds that support aquatic life. So our Missing Fountain over on Main Street would be off. The fountain over on John Roos and Milgio would be off. And then also the interactive fountain out at the Missing Sports Park would also be off. And then the big one is the potable water use for non-functional turf at commercial, industrial, and institutional sites. So that would be prohibited. And it defines non-functional turf, and we kind of added a little bit to the end of that so you can see what that definition of non-functional turf is. But it's solely ornamental grass. Grass that's not regularly used for recreational purposes, not used for civic or community events. And then it doesn't prohibit the use of water for trees, within the grass or other perennial plantings. So those are kind of the three major differences between what we're doing now or what we've done up to this point and what these new regulations would impose. So just going through, kind of wanted to go through the impacts to the city.
James, can I ask you a quick question, just
Sure.
so I understand all the stuff you're saying, I see all the stuff in here. But we went through something similar to this before, where we had to turn off the fountains and all that, if you remember.
We did, that was before I was directly involved, but I know in 2016.
Is that what it was?
We went through that, and then in 2018, the council elected to keep a lot of those water conservation measures in place, but the fountains had gone back on because we were out of that emergency drought. So almost everything you see in the resolution is currently being followed, except those three things.
Okay, so that's what I was gonna say, there's not a dramatic
Yeah,
difference.
going from
Okay.
3 days down to 2 days, the outdoor fountains is the second one.
Yeah.
And then that non-functional turf at commercial, industrial, and
Yeah.
institutional sites.
Hey, not that it actually matters, and I think we talked about this before, aren't all those systems that you're talking about, isn't that like water that just goes and recycles? Do you really use that much water on those things? Just maybe evaporation?
Yeah, they have recirculation systems, and that's part of what you have to have in place as well. But the way our water shortage contingency plan reads is.
Well, I mean,
that
it
it's
just doesn't look
prohibited.
good, that's a bad thing.
Well, like the one at Midland,
Can we, that's, you know, as far as recreation goes, I mean, that's really what it's used for. Can we continue to operate that one under the current regulations? I mean, the other ones, whatever, they're just decorative when we're spraying water up and running it down the fountain. I don't really care if that's on or off, but like, there's more value than the water that's used at the one in
There's
Midland. as
people
far
who
as I'm
take their
concerned.
baths out there.
Well, I don't want people taking their baths out there, that's a health and safety issue, but I mean, for the value to the probably thousands of people that use that over the course of the summer for recreational purpose, no different than the piece of lawn that they might use, so.
Right.
Part
It-
of, I think, Dan, to answer your question, I think you were around back then, I think, it seems to me that, I think Ted was around at the time, and talked about like 2,000 gallons a day was, you know, if you're running in it, you're running in and out, and the evaporation, I mean, I don't know what 2,000 gallons means, but there was some loss.
Yeah.
I believe it's around 500, and what the resolution states here, though, is, it's, you know, water features, or fountains, so I,
and that's more like a play structure.
That's what I was just gonna say, people.
It's not political.
I would keep it running, I think it's more public benefit from having it running than there is benefit of shutting it off for the savings of water that you're gonna evaporate out of the thing in a day, but that's my opinion. I've got more issues with this before we go ahead, so carry on with questions or your presentation.
All right, well, I'll kind of keep running through this, but feel free to, interrupt me as we go along and, ask questions or chime in. So, the direct impacts to the city and our facilities, as a city, they're actually pretty minimal. Most of our, irrigation for our turf, or our grass is coming from our non-potable system, which is excluded from, what the legislation says. It's only potable water. But the facilities that we do have potable water include City Hall here, our senior center, the Veterans Museum, and the animal shelter. We also have 2 well sites that have some turf, that is irrigated with potable water. The Veterans Museum is used for community events, and that's one of the exclusions. I know we host a number of different events there, and the chamber does as well. So it would be exempt. The senior center, they use the turf for some recreational activities. It also has a few trees that would need to be watered. But I think the long-term solution there would be to use some of the CDBG funds that we get to look at revamping that landscaping to get around or not have turf, either putting artificial in or some other type of xeriscaping to go around that. And then the 2 well sites, the long-term solution there would also be to look at changing the landscape, getting rid of the turf. But they both do have trees at the moment. We feel like we'd still kind of irrigate the trees, or you would need to irrigate the trees in order to keep things alive there. And then City Hall and the animal shelter I think our plan there would be to hook up to our non-potable system. Those are two locations that we have, non-potable out in the street, where it's accessible. There's still a cost, in doing that. But that would be our solution to, at least in the short term, to keep the grass around those areas, green, moving forward.
You know, at the senior park, it makes sense to redo that whole area because it's senior citizens. Nobody gets off the sidewalk anyway.
Well, there's a project with the awning that's gonna go up out front. So that's gonna take out, some of the grass that's there. And we've got funds, or we're eligible to use those CDBG funds for
Okay.
projects and things of that
Is that gonna go like out on
nature.
the side, as you're talking about?
I believe it's coming out of the
Oh,
front
okay.
there,
Yeah.
on the left-hand side of the door.
It's all wasted space anyway.
Yeah.
So that'll take out about half the grass around,
It's gonna take out quite a bit, I
yeah,
believe.
you just have the part on the south side of the building that you'll have to worry about.
Yeah, the south side, and I think it wraps around the
Yeah.
west side, there as well.
Okay.
So that's really it for the city. Everything else you see around that has turf, that doesn't have trees or other, perennial shrubbery or plantings is irrigated with our non-potable, water system. We do have two parks that are still on our potable system. We don't have the infrastructure that is there currently, but those are obviously used for recreational purposes, and they would be exempt as well. The remaining parks are all on our non-potable system. And then moving on to the businesses. So we were kind of scrambling, but we were putting together, we did a quick survey of the businesses where turf is present throughout the city. I did provide a little chart here, a table there in front of you. And it shows that, we have a total of 29 businesses that are commercial and industrial, 28 of which currently are on non-potable and using non-potable solely for their irrigation, which leaves about 41 that would be subject to these restrictions. And we're estimating that there's approximately 15 to 20 of these that either have trees that are mixed throughout that would be exempt, or they have other, perennial plantings, which would leave us with about 25 businesses that we feel are solely irrigating with ornamental turf. And then looking at those 25, there's approximately 10 businesses that would have the possibility of hooking up just based on where our non-potable water lines are out in the roadway. And then as for churches, we've got 11 locations in town, 2 of which are currently on non-potable. 2 others have the possible of connecting due to where our main lines are. The majority of these locations for the churches have trees throughout, or they're utilizing that turf for, community events, civic events at their churches. There may be 1 or 2 locations that have turf that's solely ornamental, that would fall under those restrictions, and those are businesses that we would, need to reach out and look at, or churches that we would need to look out and reach out to and look to finding a solution with them.
Okay, I have a question.
Yep.
For the churches, I don't know how your math works, but there are 9 that right now have potable connections. 8 of those, I'm assuming the 8 means, are probably exempt, which leaves 1 that would have a problem if they're connected to non-potable, or to potable. My question is that one of the 2 that could connect to non-pot, so they're
No.
out there all by themselves?
Yeah, there's 1 or possibly 2, and to be honest, in this last week or so, we were kind of scrambling around. There's some more work that we've got to do. But I know of 1 for certain. It's a small area of the one I'm thinking of, a very small area with just some grass under their sign. It's not, I don't think they're using it for anything of as far as their activities go or things like that. But yeah, you're right.
Okay. Because using the same question, under the commercial, that would leave 15 that are not exempt and not have potable water available, or non-potable water available.
Yeah, and I guess, Leo, to your point, I guess there is some overlap there. I didn't have the time, and I didn't go and distinguish that. So there may be some of those non-potable availability businesses that fall under the exemption.
Okay.
So it was kind of like looking at those.
'Cause that's what I would,
But
what
yeah,
I
you're
would
right,
be
there's-
interested in is that final number. What are the ones that aren't exempt, can't get non-potable water, and basically are looking at a problem?
Right, yeah.
Whose problem is that? Is that the business industry's problem or the city's problem?
Businesses.
Well, it's theirs and we have to enforce it. I'm glad you asked that, cause this confused me.
Yeah, it is a little confusing there.
So like me, my business's office is downtown, is Main Street got potable water? I don't think it does.
Non-potable.
Non-pot.
Non-potable.
Main Street, where that business is at, no, there's not a non-potable main line, running down there.
So per se, I would be responsible to get that water to my property?
Well, if, you know, that option is quite an expense, if you were actually to run main line. The availability that we're putting here is just a connection right out in the street, where the main line's already there. The closest place to where your business is at is here at Main and Wilma.
Yeah,
that-
that's a lot of line.
That's quite a bit of length.
You have a bucket, you can go to fill up.
Well, if you got every business to
Well, see,
put
that's the
money
question, is
in
whether that lawn
and
in
pay a,
front,
you know,
because the
then it
trees
would,
are in the
probably
shrubs,
wouldn't be
whether-
as bad, would it?
Well,
But
if you're not
those
watering
are
it,
the
sure,
times that
and then you kinda gotta look at, you know, the benefit, that cost to what that is, and, there's some other options where you could kinda zero-scape it, redo your landscaping to where there's not turf, put in artificial turf, things that, wouldn't require, you know, hardly any water or very, you
Artificial
know,
turf doesn't require any water.
right. Or other plantings
Fake
that
trees.
require very little water, so.
Trees are exempt.
I buy fake Christmas trees and put them up and put bingo balls on them. Decorate them.
Well, they're exempt now, but if this gets any worse, even trees aren't gonna be safe.
Well, but you go ahead and finish, because I've got,
Sure.
it's the fringe stuff that I'm the most interested in. And the landscaping at his business is one of those fringe things that I'm wondering about. So, but you
Sure.
finish your,
Yeah, so moving on, I don't have them here, but the schools, so we had discussions with the schools. The majority of the schools, they're using their turf for, you know, recreational activities or community events. And then all of the irrigation that they're using on their turf is, from Ripon Christian and from the Ripon Unified School District, is from private non-potable wells. So we're not serving any of those with our potable system. So that kind of goes away. They would fall, and they are subject to that if they did have any ornamental grass, but they're out. So the next thing you see on there is the apartments, the HOAs, and then I also included Bethany Home in there, just because of how large of a presence that they have here in town. So there's 25 locations that we were looking at, none of which are currently on the non-potable system. 9 could potentially be connected, based on where our main lines are at. And then we still gotta kinda look at all of these. There's obviously quite a bit of common areas in and around those facilities. What exactly they're being used for. I know there's recreational uses within them, and there's a lot of trees and other shrubbery around and in there that could be on the same irrigation system. We're not sure, but that's something that we need to look at a little closer and try and determine that, which facilities would actually be subject to these regulations. So I know that's quite a bit of information. As staff, we are going to look at distributing an informational flyer next week. That would be citywide. Get it out to the residents, get it out to the businesses. We'd be pushing out a nixle that would match that. We are looking at, then it's a little difficult though, based on all of these different businesses, the churches, kind of where everyone's at. There's not really a one-size-fits-all. So the intent would be push out the regulations first, and identify on there. A lot of these businesses are non-potable, they're not subject to this, they'd still be subject to the 2 days a week. But we're gonna have to go out and talk to these businesses and make sure that they understand kind of where they fall based on how we're interpreting these regulations. So as staff, that's kind of what we'll be doing here over the next couple of weeks to try and get ahead of this. We don't obviously want things to fail if they don't have to. Some businesses may just choose to do that, but that's kind of what we're looking to do over the next couple of weeks or so. Some of the things that we'd want to get feedback from the council on is any assistant efforts that you wanted to consider. We talked about, possible loans for connections if there are businesses that did want to connect in to the non-potable system, if it was available, possibly looking at like a 5-year term payback or something of that nature, or possibly other loans to do some xeriscaping, landscaping out front to eliminate that turf. Or we do nothing and we follow the regulations to a T and move on. Another part of this staff, our non-potable system isn't as robust as our potable system. Obviously, the redundancy isn't quite there. It's a good system, but we obviously need to look at capacity, moving forward. And each business, as they come in, we need to evaluate to see if the staff, if we have the infrastructure to feed them, or all of them, or percentage of them. So that would need to be identified on a case-by-case basis, and I would think it would just kind of be first come, first serve, to make sure that we can, serve them.
James, what would a typical cost be for a connection to a business if they've got a 60, 80-foot run to the connection?
Yeah, it'd really just be the construction cost. There wouldn't be any water connection fees. Ken, maybe correct me if I'm wrong, but they've already paid that for the site, so that includes either potable or non-potable. So it'd really just be the construction cost, to get out there. I mean, you're probably looking anywhere, between 8 to 15,000, maybe less. That's kind of high. But when you're going out in the right of way, you're digging up the street, you're saddling that pipe and running it somewhere in that range. It really is going to vary based on that distance.
You could do a horizontal bore.
Good.
And then you don't tear up the street curb.
You sure could,
So,
yeah. You could do that.
Okay.
Just have a couple bore pits and.
Second question is, so are businesses subject to the same penalty schedule as residences, which, if you total them all up, it's $750 a year? Is that the penalty they'd have to pay each year to have to have potable water used on landscaping?
To just pay the fines, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, the way our fine structure is set up, yeah, the business would be subject just to the same fines as our residential.
I think some businesses are probably just gonna choose to pay the fines.
If the idea is that all you have to do is pay the fine, then what the heck are we sitting here for?
Well, and the way the resolution is written and the fine structures is laid out is any additional violation within a 1-year period is $400. So that means the next.
It's 400 every time
you
someone
could have-
calls or you get caught.
Yeah.
It's gonna get rather,
So it's more than $750. It's
You'd
the
be
next
too
one,
better
you're up to
off just
1150,
turning
then you're up to
tearing out all your,
1550, and well, we gotta do numbers
And if
from
you
there.
visit them every other day, it can get really expensive really fast.
Right.
Don't visit them every other day, no one knows, and no one cares.
Well, plus, I think we need to recognize, and businesses need to recognize, we got a problem we gotta solve. If they wanna just pay a penalty, they're not helping us solve the problem. So, I get the penalty piece of it, but, I'm not happy with all this stuff. I think 40 years ago, somebody in Sacramento should have recognized this and taken care of it. These Band-Aids will only work so long, but like we talked about earlier, if there's a drought next year and the year after, trees aren't gonna be exempt, and you're not gonna be able to drink water. I mean, it's gonna get bad, so I've got something to say afterwards, but.
Oh, why wait?
Okay, well, no, what I wanna say is, I think when we're done doing what we do here, which I think the Band-Aid we need to do, is we need to get together with League of Cities and figure out how we're gonna encourage Sacramento to put a solution in place, not Band-Aids every time there's a problem. Otherwise, we're gonna revisit this every time there's a drought, and I think Leo or somebody brought it up before earlier at our other meeting was, well, then it's gonna rain one year, everybody's going, the drought's over. Well, no, it's not. It didn't even get us back to zero. And so this is gonna continue. We're in a desert. So we need to figure out what the solutions are. And again, I'm not a water guy. Dan is and Gary are. I'm not, but I'm just saying.
Yeah, I'm gonna say that the problem with that is in 2014, the state passed the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act, which we are, us along with SSJID and the city of Escalon are a groundwater sustainability agency as part of a groundwater sustainability plan that we
Right.
put together. That our plan, if implemented by 2040, we will have reached sustainability, and it's very simple for us to meet those goals. And the city of Ripon, the city of Escalon, the SSJID don't have to do a whole hell of a lot to maintain our groundwater the way it is. And it may not be the most reliable source going on into the future, but for them to take a blanket approach and apply it to the
Yeah.
entire state and say
Yeah.
that we have this big problem. We don't
That's right.
have a big problem in this area. But us combined with the city of Escalon and SSJID are net positive contributors to the groundwater in this area. So to sit here and say that we're gonna fine businesses for watering lawn, it's just insanity to me. And the amount of water, I mean, do you have any idea how many acre, or what the actual acres or square footage of the numbers we're talking about here? It's gotta be minuscule in terms of how much water is actually
For the
used.
turf, no, the only numbers I would have would be usage numbers for commercial, industrial, but that would mix in a whole bunch of other users
I
that,
mean, like the
not
church,
just landscaping.
the church, for example, they say, okay, they got a small patch out in front, so they got 100 square feet of lawn with a sign on it, and we're gonna go send them a fine because they continue to water it? Like, give me a break. This is a joke. And the amount of water we're gonna save is nothing. And then my other point in question is, when all these businesses are putting this stuff in, their turf and their trees and any other landscaping, they're getting credits for stormwater runoff as well. So those plants, and if you have a big patch of lawn that's collecting the rainwater, it's not running into the storm system. And now if you'd go shut that lawn off and it's just a patch of dirt, not only are you gonna get the runoff because it's not gonna take the water, it's also gonna have sediment that's gonna go into the storm drain. So it creates a whole nother host of issues, and just makes no sense to me. So, I don't know, it's infuriating.
You know,
But I think your comment's well. It's one size doesn't fit all. And that's what I meant by solution is, the solution maybe is every place is different. It's gotta be addressed differently, but it's this blanket thing along the state, which doesn't work.
Well, for me, I agree with a lot of what you're saying. We've got ourselves between a rock and a hard place.
Yeah.
But if nothing else, the last time we did this, Jerry Brown did it right. He didn't tell us what to do. He told us what we had to solve.
Yeah.
He basically said, either cut your water use 20% or I'm taking your money away. Well, lo and behold, most of the places in this state managed to do it. He got what he wanted and everything's fine. And that's honestly what I expected to happen this time, is we would be given some percentage to cut. Instead, they come in here and start, doesn't matter where you are, who you are, how much water you have, you're gonna kill all the lawn.
Yeah, well, and if I'm
And
a
that's stupid.
if I'm a resident and I can irrigate twice a week instead of 3 times a week, well, now I just bump up my irrigation percentage, and I'm putting the same amount of water on. It's not saving any water.
Yeah.
It's probably more is just gonna run off because I
Well,
gotta
yeah,
irrigate
that's
longer.
the problem.
So it doesn't solve.
But Leo's right. The problem is they're saying, here's, step A, step B, step C. How about just giving us the goal and let us figure out the best way to do it? Yeah, I agree with that.
Come and get us, I don't have a problem with that.
As far as long-term solutions,
Yeah.
the state, we have known for 40 years, we need more storage. And Dan mentioned the 2014 initiative, and that was clearly a part of that, and Sites Reservoir still ain't built. Temperance Flat is not built. This is insanity.
And I agree, and when I said solutions, I'm leading back to those things. We talked about it years ago.
And in regard to Dan's comment about the sustainability of our local area, it's true with one pretty considerable caveat. And that's what, in part, what happened last year when State Water Resources Control Board decided to drain New Melones. And we are now, I looked at the percentage of fill around the state this morning, and New Melones has the lowest percentage of any major storage facility in the state, and that is darn near criminal, in my opinion, because that thing was brimming this time last year, and we drained it the entire summer. You don't get that water back, and
I
that,
read someplace that it's in danger of draining below where you can drain any more out of
that's,
it.
there is a dead pool in that reservoir. That's exactly right, and
Well, and then for the fish, they gotta maintain temperatures, and then when you
Yep.
drain them down to a little
And all
pool,
that
it gets
goes
hot,
away.
it goes
It's
away.
too hot.
And then if
And
you
s-
don't get a big winter to fill it back up.
And
then
so
it-
the problem becomes, even though SSGID and OID have their own facilities, if New Melones goes to zero, then the state comes in and says, we want your water now. This stuff we're talking about now, we're playing around the margins. This,
Exactly.
no,
So
exactly.
It's pointless to
Yep.
even. Water resources we have.
That's exactly right. You're absolutely 100% correct.
So, I don't know what we wanna do with this one. I mean, what's the alternative if we say, no, we're not gonna do this? What does the state have to say about that?
I don't know, I'd have to kind of defer that to Tom,
Doctor.
to Tom there, on what they would do.
This is an area where the state has obviously expressed that it is a matter of statewide concern, so they can dictate and we have this all the time. This isn't the first time this has happened, where we're told not only what to regulate, but how to regulate it, and given all of the details. And then they tell you you have local control. Good example is this coming Tuesday, we have this policy on the use of military equipment, surplus military equipment. We've always had the ability to use that. And for them to come in and say, now you can use it, but only if you have an ordinance and a policy and a resolution, and you update it every year, and you make findings, you do reports. To me, that's a net loss, right? We've always had that ability to do that. And you've always had the ability to regulate groundwater and to regulate the use of water in the community. But to go directly counter to an executive order would be an interesting day to be picking up the phone in the next few days.
Speaking from, I don't wanna put this city in that position.
Yeah.
I do not.
Yeah.
It's complete
We're
micromanagement.
not big
which is
enough
why we can
to
do it.
handle something like that. But if there are rational, reasonable things, and this thing comes close, it's a place to start. And if there are problems with it, we can call another meeting at 1:00 in the afternoon on a Tuesday afternoon, and we can change this thing. This isn't an ordinance where it takes half your lifetime to put it into effect. It's a resolution. It could be changed tomorrow, right?
Right. Right, no, absolutely. It just, adopting this resolution doesn't mean you've signed up for the future program. You know,
Right.
You still have a right to
To me, it's a-
participate in that process.
I don't have a problem with the 2-day-a-week watering. I want more information about these people that are gonna be left hanging out to dry. Cause if there's gonna be a problem with this, that's where it's gonna be. Is when he or him have to go to a business and say, you're done.
Yeah.
That causes me a concern, and I wanna know that we've given these guys all the tools they need, and that we as a council have looked at the thing as many different directions as we can before we put them in that position.
Is there any exemption for stormwater treatment areas?
I mean, I think you can make a very good argument that that's functional turf, right? I mean, that has a function outside of, yeah, it's a
Every
health and
commercial-
safety,
Every commercial
all the,
business's turf is, to a certain extent, treatment for stormwater, so there you
Especially in
go.
the last
You know,
5 or
another
10 years.
problem that I see is when I built my office 20 years ago, the city made me do what I did.
Force you to put it all in.
They made me put up certain trees, they made me put up it was all part of the permit fee. And now we're gonna turn around and tell people, well, cut those trees out, you know.
No, you're not gonna cut it. In fact, you wanna plant more.
Exactly.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I think from our perspective, we agree with everything that's been discussed. I mean, we're all on the
This
same
isn't
page.
directed at you guys.
But looking at long-term, and at least what we can do in Ripon as far as sustainability, one thing that has a long-term benefit is transitioning some of these non-residential uses to the non-potable system. At some point, we're gonna have a tertiary treatment system with wastewater. At that point, we're looking to get rid of water, and that's gonna be a challenge. So this could be really an opportunity to hopefully, maybe staff could put some time into what a program would look like, to loan those businesses the money. That makes sense, and there should be a certain size where you wanna get some return on that investment. But there may be some businesses that really has an opportunity to get to our non-potable system that's gonna help us out in the
Like on
future.
Main Street, don't we have like tunnels under there already where we could just run the potable water?
They
Non-potable?
have electric wires in them.
Oh, so.
Yeah. Electricity and water don't go together. But the problem, Kevin, though, is potable water eventually non-potable goes away. I mean, that gets drained as well.
Yeah, but this would be water from the wastewater treatment plant at some point.
Okay,
It'd be tertiary treated.
so flush your toilets often?
Well, but instead of it going to the water treatment plant and into the river, on the
Yeah.
other side, we catch it and bring
Yeah.
it back.
Yeah.
So we can
Exactly.
put
Yeah.
some-
Yeah, and then it has in lieu recharge on our aquifer, because
Yeah.
we're not pulling it from our non-potable well.
Yeah.
So, that's the future of where we're heading, we're putting money aside to do that, but that will have it, for us in Ripon, and Daniel's
That'd be
exactly right.
huge.
Sigma and what we see on Sigma and the recharge we get from the river, we don't have the same, issues that other areas have in the state, but we're trying to be good stewards of that groundwater. I think the tertiary treatment plant provides a lot of in lieu recharge that benefits those downstream users.
But like,
That
to,
aquifer.
to Dan's point though, is we're being treated in Ripon the same way as Palm Desert.
Right.
Yes,
And we're
right.
completely
That's
different.
what's wrong with
Yeah.
this whole approach.
But
Yeah.
if we use this as an opportunity, we come up with a program to get people onto the non-potable system, it's gonna benefit the wastewater treatment plant down the line. So maybe we could put some time into what that program would look like. We could also get specific numbers on how many people would be eligible and make sense for that program, and council could at least look at that.
So those businesses that do not have close proximity to the non-potable system, do we have discretion to waive any punitive component to this for those? Otherwise, they're just gonna get hammered, and they don't have the ability to connect to the non-potable system.
And with some of those, we could put a little bit more work into those fringe type of business. I forgot who said that, but, who are the ones who don't have non-potable but are gonna be really impacted by this? And, once we kind of see what number of businesses are, how substantial of an area that is, the council could look at maybe doing a program to replace the turf. Because the last thing we want is just dead lawn all over the city. That is just gonna become weeds for a very long time. So, do we look at a loan program to deal with that and replace that with something? Or
I think we
really,
need more, what we have here is a good overview type thing.
right,
But as with most things, the devil's in the details. It's one thing if you have a business that's got 100 square feet of lawn that's
Exactly.
affected by this,
yep,
and it would cost you $2,500 to take the lawn out and
Exactly.
put in hardscape of
Yeah.
some sort. And another business that's got an acre and a half of lawn that's affected by this, and, at that point, to solve this, we need more information.
and you're exactly right. And before we brought that to council, we just wanted to make sure we're on the right track.
Right.
So we could put a little bit more time into both those areas and bring that back to council. Here, probably at the Tuesday meeting, we'll probably add that as an emergency item to that meeting, to talk a little bit more about it, because obviously these are taking effect now. In the beginning, I mean, our approach, we're gonna do a lot of public outreach. We talked about the staff that we're gonna have go out and do that, because it's important for those businesses to understand how they're protected by this. If there are non-potable, if they have trees, we don't want anyone to stop watering their
Right.
lawn because they believe it's ornamental turf. We want to make sure they understand what rules they fall under. So we're going to be reaching out to businesses individually to do that. But the beginning is going to be a lot of public outreach and education with this. So we're not going to be out giving out fines.
Well, I was just gonna say, that's a good point. We need to make sure we do what we normally do, because of whatever the story is. They go, well, you're terrible, you're requiring me to do that. No, we're not.
Right.
We're just enforcing what the states come down, not trying to lay blame for their 40 years of failure, but we're doing it because we have to.
Right. So we could bring that back on Tuesday, hopefully. We'll work to that end.
Well, I was just wondering, is there some grace period you put in for people who are, say business that says, yeah, I'm willing and wanting to work towards non-potable, but I can't do it immediately, or, we need to figure out how we're gonna do that, but in the meantime, they're still irrigating their lawn, do they get, do we have some, that may be similar to how our response to COVID was, it's like, okay, you maybe were in violation, but now you're in this sort of appeal process, or you're in some, you're
Well,
working towards a solution, but not just gonna kill your grass in the meantime because I can't connect to non-potable tomorrow.
Tom, could we adopt this resolution with the, I don't know if stipulation's the right word, or requirement, that staff enter into a period of education and communication with the public, bring that back at a future meeting as to where we are, and along with the stuff that James is gonna do about more specifics? Cause I don't wanna step off this thing and in 2 weeks have somebody roll in here all upset because they can't water their lawn, and Daniel's right, we need to know what the heck we're doing before we start.
That would actually help staff, because even having this ready for Tuesday is gonna be a real monumental
You have
challenge, so.
six months to prepare.
Yeah,
It would.
because time's not on our side right
This is
now.
the kindergarten.
But I still think passing it like Leo's saying, at least we're showing that we're trying to take this thing serious.
Yeah, but, I think the problem though is if you put it in place, you enforce it now, and folks get a hold of this and they say, oh, I gotta turn my grass, my sprinklers off. In 2 weeks, with this weather coming, it's gone. You've lost it. There's no coming back. And so that's where we're, yeah. That would help. That would definitely help give us that period of time to, hopefully they keep, well, get us through for a while until we.
Cleanup things to do on Tuesday, potentially Tuesday, and then from more of a directive from the council in terms of policy for enforcement to try to work with people, not apply the ordinance, the resolution in such a way as to be punitive.
Well, not enforce the resolution until the staff has come back with a more detailed report of what properties are affected, what educational and informative measures they have taken, what reactions, hell, give them till the July meeting to bring all that back.
Okay.
To me, the only thing we ought to really enforce now is that 2-day-a-week watering. That works, The rest of it, there's some landmines out there that I don't want anybody stepping on until we have a good chance of figuring out we're gonna survive this.
How do we currently enforce the watering 2 days a week? Just if someone calls in or someone, water cop sees it?
Yep.
Yeah, if the water patrol person sees it, yeah, right now we've got, people working, after hours that are out, but yeah, complaints as well.
So
And there are
I've seen the
violations
signs out already about you can only water certain times. Are those signs, I don't read them, I know what they're there for. Is it what's in the ordinance now, or do we have to change the number of days on there and all that?
It would need to change, yeah, those would need to
Okay,
change.
so what does it say now?
Now, it's the 3 days a week. It identifies the odd and the even days that you can and can't water.
Okay. Just get a little sticky?
Okay, so you have enough information to move on?
Well, do you want this ordinance, or this resolution, you want action on it?
Well, because we have to have action by tomorrow, is that right?
Yeah. That's why we had to-
Well, then I will make a motion to adopt the resolution with the condition that it be put in place, emphasis placed on the 2-day-a-week watering. Staff is to come back at the July meeting with a more detailed report about properties that are affected, options available to address it, and estimates on costs for all those things, so that does that make sense?
Yeah.
Can we add that?
If that's the motion, we would just need a second for that.
I'll
Can we add
second,
that no-
second.
Can we add
Leo.
that no fine or penalty will be incurred until after the July meeting as well? Till we
Leo.
got set more?
I would be willing to go along with that, except for the 2-day-a-week watering. I mean, how hard is that?
Well, that's fine.
Yeah,
Can we,
okay,
We gotta
I'll
get
add
the
that.
change signed though.
That enforcement in all areas except for the 2-day-a-week watering will take place after the update at the July meeting.
And I'll accept that as the
Leo,
second.
you need to hit your move.
Oh,
And,
And the fountains,
and
the Michelin one stays on.
And
Just wanna
perhaps
wanna
this
be
was
clear.
folded,
Second.
maybe
We
this
can
was
go
folded
talk
into
about
that.
In the lobby afterwards, but it's not worth arguing about it this time.
Gary's got
Maybe this was folded into that, but there should be, and Dan kind of alluded to it, but some kind of a grace period, I'm thinking 6 months anyway, for a connection to be made to a non-potable source for these businesses.
Well,
Given-
that's
given 'em
all
until-
gonna be at the July meet, nothing's gonna happen until we
Well,
get
and if
some
the hammer
information.
drops after the July meeting, then
We control the hammer.
that's what I'm
And I said the
suggesting.
hammer can't drop before July in my motion.
No, I understand that. That still only gives them 30 days to make a connection.
But at the July meeting, we can give them another 6 months if we want to.
Okay,
But right
that's-
now, I just
We
don't
should
feel like
figure
we
out
have
what that
enough
number
That's what I'm
information
interested
to
in.
do that.
Yeah, okay.
It can't be modified is what you're
Right,
saying.
right,
That's
exactly.
good.
We can- Once we figure out where we
No,
are.
I don't have a problem with your, I just want more information.
All right, Mr. Mayor, you have a motion, and you have a second.
Good.
Passes 4-5.
we vote?
Yeah,
Oh.
you did. And are we done? Right? That's all I have. That's all I have.